News.com. Your information station, WTIM.
Welcome in to WTIM, your information station. I'm your host, Tim Zalabak. Thank you all for tuning in today, the WTIM Morning Show, and thanks so much to the sponsors that make it all possible. People's Bank and Trust, where they put people first, and Landmark of Taylorville, where you always do better at Landmark. Today, over the phone, we have Dr. Kent Redfield, Professor Emeritus of Political Science for the University of Illinois. How are you today, Dr. Redfield?
Doing just fine.
Amazing. So we have plenty of very relevant topics to get into today, and coming straight out of the news here, Dr. Redfield, we're talking about the push for major public pension reform bill. Now, I mean, this could affect a lot of people's lives out there. What do we need to know about this public pension reform?
Well, the state of Illinois has probably the worst pension system in the country, state pension system, in terms of its unfunded liability. We have done things in the past like pension holidays where we just didn't make the payments. Like, you've got a 401k that's being matched by your employer, and just think of it like your employer just skipping putting that money in your 401k. We've done early retirements when we went from Republican governors back to Democratic governors 2002, and so this is 20% of the state budget. About $11 billion a year goes to this. So we've got a big problem in terms of it's just, if we're spending money paying off pension debt, we're not spending it on other things that most people would think are more important in terms of state government.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense there. And we're still paying off this pension debt you talk about. And you said 20% of the state budget actually is this pension. Where did it go wrong? And what happened in the past to make us keep repaying this to this day?
Well, we've just out and out balanced the budget by declaring a pension holiday, and in both Republican and Democratic governors. And so, that puts you behind the eight ball, because if you don't make the initial principal payment to make it up, you got to put in the money you didn't pay plus all of the investment income that you would have made from having that, putting that in these big retirement funds. When you do early retirement, then you're, we had long line of Republican governors and we shift to Democratic governors. You want to bring in your people. If you're a Democrat, the Republicans want to, protect the people that, are in state government. You offer early retirement and you say, well, you need to be 65, but we're going to give you 2 years, 3 years, 5 years worth of pension credit, which is just, and that's another drain on, and then, where these funds are invested. So when you have really bad years, like we had when the housing bubble burst, all of that adds up, and we kick it down the road. So now we're looking at some ways to put more money in, but at the same time, we've got in order to stabilize it, we adopted a new pension system for everybody that was hired after about 2011 or so. And what that did was create, you've got people working the same jobs, and one's in a much worse pension system than we used to have. We're also in a situation where the reason the state doesn't participate in Social Security is because we've got a pension system that's supposed to be equal to that. If it's not, then you're out of what they call safe harbor. And if that gets bad enough, you could end up with a situation where the state would be locked into the retirement system, the pension system, but also having to do Social Security on top of that. So there's a lot of things that need to be fixed, and everybody's got their own piece of this. Makes for messy politics.
Yeah, we're learning about the tier system right here, tier one, tier two of the public pension reform bill. So where do we move from here, Dr. Redfield, and how can Illinois begin to fix these budget issues?
Well, one of the things is we have got some bonds out there. Some of them were kind of pension bonds that where we borrowed money that we should have been able to do it at a cheaper rate and kind of pay down some of the debt. This was under Governor Blagojevich, but he took about half that money and put it into operating expenses and healthcare funding, and those bonds are now being paid off. We borrowed a bunch of money again because we could do it at a cheaper rate. We had $17 million worth of unpaid bills that we were paying people interest on. Got to be $1 billion a year that we were paying on unpaid bills. And we borrowed money to pay that down. Those bonds are paid off. The governor wants to take that money and just, continue to collect that money, but and put it into the pension payments. So, that's a good thing. In order to fix the tier two system to make it comply with Social Security, we're looking at raising the cap on how much income your pensionable income. So now, if you make more than about $120,000, you can only collect pensions on the first 120,000. We need to do that. That would cost, maybe it might have a price tag of, $250 million a year. So, one step forward, one step back. And that doesn't even get us into the question of whether, maybe we went too far in the tier two and we need to kind of sweeten the pension system for the tier two people. But, so these are tough choices.
Yeah. Let's talk a little bit about the people that can be affected, which is just so many different groups of workers when you're talking in unions, employee unions, teacher unions, police and firemen. How will they be affected? And looks like they're in the tier two benefits.
Yeah, I mean, there are municipal and separate police and firemen pension funds. There's some up in Chicago, but the main ones are teachers, state employees, and state university. And so, again, your pensions are not under, ultimately the state has to pay those pensions. We have a non-impairment clause in the state constitution. A court case back in around 2010 where they tried to cut benefits for retirees and current employees. The Supreme Court said you can't do that. Your pensions are a contractual agreement that is protected by the Constitution. So no one is going to lose the benefits that they currently have, either as a state worker or a retiree. The problem is if we don't do something, that 20% of the state budget gets to be 25% of the state budget if you project that out. So, we're hurting the ability to do this, pay the services that we need to pay, that we need to cover for, that we expect state government to do. So, everybody, we certainly are trying to pay it down. The governor thinks we've got a long-term plan with putting this extra money as these bonds become due. But it isn't something, when they look long-term, you're talking about balancing this at 2040. I'm not likely to be around in 2040, but it is, it took us a long time with a lot of stupid decisions to get to this point, and it'll take a while to dig out of it, but at least, we're moving in the right direction, and that's encouraging. But you certainly have problems if you've got, people that are working in first responder jobs, police, firemen, and you've got some of the people that have better pension systems the old employees have better pension systems than the new employees. There are, that creates, some problems in the workforce, but they're basically equity issues too. So it is, like I say, this is a long-standing problem that we're finally are trying to address it, but the math is the math, and when you don't put the money, you don't save the money, then you lose the money, and you lose the income growth that might have happened if that had taken place.
Yeah, that's Dr. Kent Redfield, Professor Emeritus of Political Science at the University of Illinois. We just breezed through that first half of the WTIM morning show, but laying out all of the major public pension reform bill details for us right there. That was Dr. Redfield. We learned so much from him right there. We're going to switch gears when we come back, but you are listening to the WTIM morning show right here on WTIM, your information station.
Your information station, WTIM. Radio gets results.
Miller Media Group Advertising works for Taylorville Estates. Here's Administrator Tony Clark.
In the past year, we have doubled our census. So that's been impacted mainly by the radio advertising. That is where we do the majority of our advertising. And our census definitely shows that it works. They lead us in the right direction for the season changing, and they anticipate our upcoming needs before we even have to tell them what they are. We've had consistent growth over the past 12 months. Like I said, we've doubled in our census, and that's been the first time in 43 months since prior to COVID that we've gotten to where now we have a waiting list for people to come. So advertising on the radio really does have an impact.
I'm Will Perkins, President and CEO of the Taylorville Community Credit Union. TCCU is proud to be the exclusive sponsor of the Miller Media Group Community Spotlight, allowing a different nonprofit organization to be highlighted on WTIM, WMKR, and WRAN each month.
The Senior Citizens of Christian County is located at 701 West Adams in Taylorville. We provide many important services to seniors in Christian County. I am Jennifer Verardi, the Executive Director of the Senior Center, and I would like to let you know that our Senior Center provides services strictly on a donation basis. Lunch is served Monday through Friday at 11:30, and Meals on Wheels is offered to those who are homebound. Please call us at 824-4263 for more information on our services.
This is Cammie Payne, General Manager of the Miller Media Group. We, along with TCCU, are proud to bring you the Community Spotlight each month.
TCCU is proud to be the exclusive sponsor of the Miller Media Group Community Spotlight. Come join us. You'll wonder why you waited. Member NCUA.
And yet another major brand just announced it's halting all social media advertising.
The two most overused and abused words in advertising are truth and trust. They are the two most precious commodities for all brands, big and small. As an advertiser, you have to trust your partners to protect your brand's truth using the media consumers trust. Radio, it's on.
Trust the Miller Media Group to deliver your message.
Craig's Realtors continues to be the market leader in 2023. I'm Steve Craigs. It's a seller's market. If you're considering selling, click on our icon at TaylorvilleDailyNews.com.
Find out about all the products and services offered by Dan Rizzo, your American Family Insurance agent in Taylorville, by clicking their icon at TaylorvilleDailyNews.com.
Your information station, WTIM.
And welcome back to WTIM, your information station. We are in the midst of the WTIM morning show with Dr. Kent Redfield, Professor Emeritus of Political Science at the University of Illinois. Thanks so much to the sponsors that make it all possible. People's Bank and Trust, where they put people first, and Landmark of Taylorville, where you always do better. At Landmark, the whole first half right there, we talked about the push for major public pension reform bills. We learned all about the tier system there and who might be affected. Now, switching gears, and we're going to talk a little bit about the protest that was happening in the downtown Chicago O'Hare Airport. It was the Gaza protest here, and this seemed like a messy situation over there, Doctor.
Yeah, I mean, anytime you're blocking a major interstate, then that's a disruption to the transportation system. And the state police and the Chicago police, it was handled pretty efficiently in terms of removing the protesters. I'm not sure there were arrests. If there were arrests, this is basically it's a misdemeanor in terms of blocking a public thoroughfare, and so it certainly was a disruption for people that were trying to make their flight in Chicago, and again, this is a clash of free speech rights, the right to protest, versus that people wanting to have access to the transportation system. The larger context and why Governor Pritzker, was on national television Sunday morning, why he got questions about it is, if you're as old as I am, then you remember the 1968 Democratic National Convention in Chicago. We had these huge protests and basically a riot outside Convention Hall. And so there is a concern that, if you get this sort of situation in downtown Chicago in August when the convention is here, then, the national press will be focusing on, what's going on outside the hall rather than the renomination of President Biden for, the upcoming general election. And so there are conflicts now with the city of Chicago with people that want to protest. And in terms of, right now the issue is Gaza and the Palestinian Israel conflict, but it just as easily could be pro-life and pro-choice kinds of groups. And so it is, this is, Governor Pritzker's worked very hard to get this convention here. He certainly has ambitions, perhaps to go beyond being governor. And so, what he wants is a nice, smooth, I think, 1996 convention that we had. But if it deteriorates into the kind of ugly scene that we saw in 1968, with all of the volatility that's going on, if you've got right-wing and left-wing groups, out in the street, that will become the story. So it is, it was, everybody looked at that and they saw, the inconvenience of what happened with the, blocking the road to O'Hare. But it could be, a prelude to kind of what might be going on in August.
Yeah. And with 2 minutes left here, Dr. Redfield, how do you think the migrant transportation crisis, some might call it, how do you think that might affect this Democratic National Convention in August? Because it seems like Governor Pritzker has really taken a special interest towards this in this sanctuary state of Illinois. It seems like it's becoming pretty filled up.
Yeah, and again, you want to deal with the situation. You want to provide the services, but you also don't want lots of migrants in police stations and O'Hare Airport. And again, if the story is not, the Democratic National, the platform for President Biden's campaign, but rather, all the messy situation with, not being able to house and provide services for the migrants that have been shipped in from Texas, then you're changing the storyline in terms of what people would like to present. And so, that's a big concern. You want to provide the services. You also don't want to create a distraction from what you hope is the main event, which is a nice, smooth Democratic National Convention.
Without a doubt, Dr. Redfield, we are out of time. I thank you so much for taking the time and being here with us today.
Oh, certainly. Good to talk to you.
Really good speaking with you. That was Dr. Kent Redfield, Professor Emeritus of Political Science at the University of Illinois. I'm Tim Zalabak, your host of the WTIM Morning Show. Thank you all for listening here on WTIM, your information station.
The Big 870 WTIM Assumption Taylorville, 96.1 W241 CF Taylorville, 107.5 W298 CD Shelbyville.